Over centuries, our landscape has been reshaped by factories and shafts, but folklore isn't just a pretty backstory. These myths warned people about local dangers, mapped out morality, tapped into our collective fears. Dal Chatwin, author of the upcoming novel The Bobhowler, believes that reliving them helps us reconnect with place and our own anxieties about identity, memory and grief. So what draws so many to these tales?
The West Midlands myths have a very unique quality to them. And I think a lot of that comes from our rich history in this area. There's also a unique sense of humour that bleeds into these myths. And I'll give a little example. In Birmingham, it's more of a contemporary myth, but there's a creature called the Wumptay. And the Wumptay is this mischievous spirit that often transforms into a double-decker bus and plays cruel pranks on unsuspecting victims, mostly people waiting for the late-night bus during their late-night commute.
The Midlands has its share of enduring myths. There's the chained oak near Alton, rumoured to kill a noble hare with every falling branch. Jenny Greenteeth, a water hag blamed for drownings in Shropshire pools. And tales of headless riders crossing Staffordshire moorland at night. But for every legend that survives, many more have slipped through the cracks. Industrialisation shifted our focus from land and spirit to labour and steel. The Bobhowler, Dal Chatwin's invented mob figure, feels like a ghost of those lost symbols. So where does fiction begin? And what parts are borrowed from forgotten lore?
The Bobhowler itself as a creature and the folklore that surrounds it is a complete invention of mine. So I wanted to create a mythical being and a folklore for the region. Even though we have many ourselves, I wanted to contribute to that tapestry.
Tracking these stories down isn't easy. The Midlands never had a central canon of myths, just scattered tales, half-remembered place names, or odd bits of superstition. Local archives hold scraps, but much of it sits between memory and invention. So when stories do resurface, they raise the question, where are they coming from? And how do we know what's real?
A lot of it came from books, mostly books by local authors, about local history, more specifically a guy called Andrew Homer. Of course, there's also a lot of internet diving. And the third one would be visiting the areas themselves, visiting the locations like we are here at Moorcroft Wood in Moxley, just being in these areas and immersing myself in the time and the place and trying to imagine what it would have been like back then and what sort of myths were being told at the time.
These weren't just ghost stories, they were warnings, ways to process grief, map danger, pass on truth without facts. Then came the factories and the stories faded, but they still echo because the fears they spoke to never really left. So if we forgot them, the question now is, what do we stand to gain by remembering them?
Well, myths are like a time capsule that's been buried in the collective consciousness. They're a gateway to our history, to a time when the written word wasn't a thing and it was more passed down through oral tradition. They also make great entertainment as well, and they have to be entertaining because otherwise they get bogged down in too much, factual stuff that some people might find boring. So you create these heroic characters or these mythical creatures. And also, they just have a lot of our fears and anxieties and our hopes and dreams. They're very much reflections of us. And we can learn a lot from myths, learn a lot of valuable morals, and also a lot about our heritage.
We talk a lot about what the Midlands built, but rarely about what it buried. These old stories weren't just entertainment, they were survival tools, emotional truths dressed as superstition. And in an age where we've lost connection to place, maybe it's the myths, not the maps, that show us where we really are.